That took a little longer to get in the zone than I thought, but hey, what are you going to do? Hi folks, welcome aboard. It's the Monday Guitar Show. We're doing the with you on Mondays, which is hang out and talk about the guitar. And before we go even a step further, I've got to welcome you on board. Hi, how you doing? It's great to have you. It's great to be back. Last week we did a pre-recorded stream because of course I was away touring around Europe. I had a great time playing out with the boys in Blitzkrieg, but I'm really happy to be back. Happy to be hanging out with our little community that's going on here. If you're brand new, let me tell you a little bit about what happens on these streams. I'm just checking that my voice is on. It appears that it is. That's good. Had all sorts of technical issues today in the run up to this stream, but I think we've got them all figured out as we go. But yeah, what we do here is we hang out, we chat about the guitar, we've got a lovely little community. Our objective is to make you, dear viewer, a better guitar player, even if only slightly, when you leave us than you were when you arrived. And we've had quite a good success rate so far. It's a lot of fun. Now, today we are discussing an interesting topic, which is how to sound your best when you play live. Specifically, how to adjust your playing for the live environment so you can sound at your peak, let's say. Because we've probably all had this thing where, you know, maybe you've been playing in the studio, you've been practicing, you've been playing at home, whatever, and then you take it out on the live stage, and for whatever reason, it either doesn't work for you, or it just doesn't translate. It doesn't kind of carry to an audience the way you would hope that it would. We're going to answer some of these questions today. We'll also answer any questions that you have. Let us know, by the way, if you're tuning in. Let us know a couple of things. First of all, we always want to know what guitar you guys are playing. I'm playing one of my favorites. This is my PRS Custom 22 from 2002. All of the twos. It's like a bingo card for guitars. I love this guitar. It has my favorite set of humbuckers, set of high gain humbuckers certainly, that are kicking around in this instrument. This is a Bulldog, let me get this right, a Bulldog Black Label and a Bulldog Extremist. I've got so many pickups going on that it's hard to remember what they're all called. Also, I need to very quickly make a slight adjustment to this camera device, because what I've got going on here is a camera that is threatening to overheat, and we absolutely don't want to do that. So I've got a little fan on the back, and I'm going to make sure that that's on. Now normally I would have this all activated and all ready to go before the stream for you guys. That's much better. It's going to cool down gently as we go. But we've had all sorts of technical issues in the setup process today. Again, I think we've got them all, and I would hate to have everything ironed out in terms of kinks and then lose it all due to camera overheating. So anyway, listen, we're going to say some hellos. We're going to turn to the comments while we're on the subject of humbuckers. I'm going to show you this. This is, oh dear, I'm dropping things. This is a gift from my friend Nick Page, who makes the master built Maybach guitars. So you know I love Maybach guitars. This is a gift that he gave me when I visited the Maybach custom shop. Beautiful little pickup. This is one of 10 amber pickups, unpotted Nick Page signature pickups. I'm going to put this potentially in this guitar, and we'll turn it into an absolute high gain monster. I'm unsure. Keep your eyes peeled because I'm going to have some fun with that. So yes, a lot of fun. It also happens to be 4 conductor, which I like. Now Nick told me it was 2 conductor. It's not 2 conductor, it's 4 conductor. Excellent. Big fan of that. Anyway, let's tune in with the comment section. Let's see how everyone's getting on. So we're going to start at the very top. We've got some comments about the audio. Hopefully the audio is working for you guys. Let me know if it's behaving itself. If it sounds a bit weird, I might be able to fix it. But let me know. I'm going to cough. Excuse me. Beg your pardon. Yeah, it's interesting getting back into the swing of these things when you've had a week off, isn't it? Anyway, Marcin is first to the door. Marcin, it's lovely to see you. Something's changed. Something bizarre has happened with that is so much better. StreamYard has decided to do weird stuff. I don't like that big comment. I like these ones. That's much better. PJ is in the house. Lovely to see you as his response audio. Larry Warren's tuning in. A couple of comments about the pre-recorded stream last week, we didn't want to leave you guys without a lesson, so we had a pre-record last week, but we are very much live this week. Fog Cornish is in the house. He says he's just going to say this, and apologies if it upsets people. It doesn't upset me, man, you're all good. But pretty much every band I've seen sounds pants when using a digital amp. Sounds pants, as if to reinforce the point. Well, I may try and convince you otherwise on this, but that's not really the subject of today's stream. I will say that when I was out last week, I used a digital rig for all of my stuff. I think one of the problems with this, very quickly, I think one of the problems with digital gear is the absence of sound in the middle of the stage. So I think with digital stuff, if you have it dialed right and you get it set up correctly, it can sound absolutely fabulous about 10 rows back, let's say. However, there is usually a big space in the middle of the stage, in the front 5 or 10 rows, where the guitar just doesn't translate because the PA is throwing all the way out there, and unless you have center fills and all sorts of fancy stuff going on, it can be very difficult for guitars to actually compete with a drum kit until you get far enough back that the PA kind of kicks in and does its thing. So for me, I always like to have a cabinet on stage, running not an FRFR cabinet. I like to have a physical cabinet on stage, but I like to let the digital stuff do its magic further back where it kind of works. I think that's part of the issue, but you know, I'll opine more about that later maybe. Anyway, Kate Strange is here. Vil is tuning in. Great to have you on board. Sacred Godslayer's here. Helmet Strap's here. Crankatom's here. Marcin's playing his PRS CE24. Very good choice. I played my CE24 for the whole tour. It's got the Fishman Fluence Devin Townsend set. Maybe the Nick Page humbucker will go in there. That might be an interesting choice. Franz is here. Johnny Ninefingers is tuning in. Regarding live tone, here's an interesting one from Response Audio. He says an old video from Steve Morse playing with his trio, and then solo examples where he'd break down some of the parts. The tone when he was playing by himself was different than he would imagine compared to a band setting. It was a strange EQ with kind of a buzzy overdrive. Remember thinking, boy, I would never dial in a sound like that. But when the band kicked in, it just fit. This is gold, right? So I'm going to start this up. We're going to come back to this later because the tone thing is a very interesting point when it comes to playing live. Today we're going to focus more on the playing thing. But anyway, we've got a few more. Mike Seedorf's tuning in, playing a Solar A16 with a JB4 in the bridge, a little 59 in the neck. Very cool. Steve Lou's tuning in. How was the Wii Tour? The Wii Tour was excellent. Thank you very much, man. Had a great time. Greetings from behind his Duesenberg Star Player 3, very cool. Cranker Tom is in the house. Catmandu 1962's here. Chris Wisan, Cree Wisan is tuning in. A first-time commenter, if I'm not mistaken. It's great to have you. We've got an Ibanez, a lot of Ibanez love here. Who else do we have? Very quickly, Dreams is tuning in. The girlfriend is banned to sleep on the couch. He's got his PRS next to him because he's got a cold. I hear you, man. I was ill the last couple of weeks before I went away. It was horrible. We've got a PRS McCarthy 594. Snap. Love those guitars. Sam Jr. is here. Who have I missed? Raphael is here. New Rose's Artworks in the house. Dylan Jessup is here. I think we've said hello to everyone. So we're going to get into the substance of today's stream, which is how to sound great playing live. Now, we are not going to focus our attention, contrary to the last couple of streams, we're not going to focus our attention too strongly on tone today, but we are going to talk about ways that you can play to improve your live presentation, let's say. And what I'm not talking about here is I'm not talking about your live presentation in terms of showmanship, let's say. So what I'm going to begin with is we're going to begin with some, I guess, some technique things that you can pay attention to, and then we'll talk more about some ways that you can shape your playing, ways you can choose things to play depending upon the environment that you're playing in. But we're going to begin with some physical technique, and this starts with 3 core points, which is to play cleanly, to play in tune, and to play in time. And we're going to work through these one at a time. So what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to throw a backing track on, and we're going to perform some experiments, and we'll use this Black Sabbath style backing track that I've been playing along with, which is in the key of B minor. So if you want something to play, if you're unsure what to play over the top of this track, the easiest way to play along with it is with B minor pentatonic, which might be 7, and then pinky finger on 10, 7, 9, 7, 9, 7, 9, 7, 10, 7, 10. Now, I want everybody to be able to play along with this, so we're not going to complicate the options, but of course, if you wanted to go further with this, there's loads of cool stuff you can play over this track. Now, we are going to begin with an exploration of what it means to play cleanly, because this is something that will really help your live translation. Now, cleanly we can refer to as an ability to play things that we want to play without other sounds getting in the way. So we have our sound that we're trying to create. We don't have other noises that we don't want. Now, this is not to say that we never want sympathetic strings or we never want other sounds to creep into the guitar. That can be very cool, but it's rather that we should always be intentional with how we are producing sounds on the instrument. So let me give you an example in isolation. I'm going to play the B minor pentatonic scale without delay, and I'll play it very cleanly, or at least reasonably cleanly, and it's going to sound like this. Let me play it for you again, but this time I'll play it without playing it cleanly. And this might be what happens if we let... well, an example of this might be if we let lots of string noise come in, but there's lots of ways we can play uncleanly. We'll get into all of them, or at least as many as we can. An unclean version might sound like this. Versus clean. Unclean. Now the difference is somewhat subtle if you don't know what you're listening for, but for us guitar players, we'll be able to hear a glaring difference between the two. And this is the first step to sounding your best when you're playing live. Now, to illustrate this, we're going to throw a backing track on, and what I'm going to encourage you to listen for before we do a bit of a train on this is I'm going to encourage you to listen for not so much the handling noise, because you won't really hear the handling noise in the track, but when I switch from playing cleanly to playing less cleanly, have a listen to how the notes don't really jump out, is what I'm trying to say. Have a listen to the way that the ideas don't communicate as strongly when we aren't playing as cleanly. I'll throw the track on, I'll show you what I mean. So let's begin with an example that is clean. Oh, let me just turn the backing track up. There we go. Once again, we're in B minor if you want to play along. Here's some clean. Now let me play it unclean. Clean. Unclean. I'm certain you can hear the difference there. Now, once again, if I do those examples outside of the track, here is the clean example. Here's the unclean. It doesn't sound night and day outside of the track. You can still hear the notes that are going on, but as soon as we have a lot of chaos going around us, a lot of music that's happening, a lot of space being filled by other instruments, specifically other pitched instruments like loud bass guitars, rhythm guitars, keyboard instruments, etc., vocalists, when we start to play less than cleanly, our playing gets masked very quickly. So how can we solve this? Well, the way we solve this is by Mal Riley is saying both are distorted. You're right. Now let me clarify what I'm saying here. When I'm saying to play clean, I'm not meaning play with a clean tone. What I'm meaning is you play in such a way that there's no extraneous noises. The notes are clean that you are producing. It's a different thing to playing with a clean sound. So a clean sound would be, I'm sure you all know what a clean sound is, but if I switch to something like this, for example. Now That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about playing with the kind of sound that you want to play with, which in this case is a gainy sound, but playing it cleanly, so playing without extra noise. Now, the way we can accomplish this is to focus our attention in the practice room on dialing in on muting and hold ourselves to a high standard of cleanliness in our practice, because it's very difficult to, excuse me, I'm going to cough again. It's very difficult to actually think about this stuff live and apply the cleaning up process while you're performing. So this stuff needs to be done ahead of time. It needs to be done in the practice room. So when we're playing cleanly, we are playing without extraneous string noise, which means muting. Now, our muting may look something like this. If we go to the two hands cameras, I think I'll mess this up once again. There we go, two hands cameras, having loads of difficulty today. Vil S says precise versus sloppy. That is absolutely one way of putting it, but what I'm talking about here precise specifically is string noise. So the way we might accomplish this is with our left hand, we can mute notes that are north in terms of pitch or towards the floor in terms of direction compared to the one we're playing. So if we play this, which is ninth fret on the D string, with the inside of my left hand fingers, I'm dampening the G, B, the camera's focusing, dampening my G, B and high E strings. With my right hand, with the fleshy part of my right hand, I'm dampening the low E and A strings, so that if I were to strike any string other than the one I'm on, difficult to do while you're still holding the note, but it means that only this note is going to come out. Now, a good test for this is if you have friends. I saw Rob Chapman demonstrate this at Guitar Dreams. It was really good fun. If you have friends, ask them to come along and just do this to your guitar while you hold notes. The only notes that should come out, even if somebody is battering on your instrument, is the ones that you're trying to hold down. Now, this is super important because, as we've heard, it really affects the way your playing translates, but there are other things that really affect the way your playing translates, and the next thing we're going to talk about is time. Now, timing is measured, in my opinion, I'm going to opine here for a second, on a few different levels, and it's important to have them all dialed in. We can measure our time on a macro level, which is to say, are we playing the rhythm that we are supposed to be playing? So this is an example of, for example, if we played Happy Birthday, right? And I played maybe this. Recognizable as Happy Birthday, the rhythm is appropriate. If we clap Happy Birthday, if we do Clappy Birthday, we can get this. You'd still recognize that as Happy Birthday, even without pitch. Make sense? Now, if I play Happy Birthday without the appropriate rhythm, this would be an example of having macro rhythm that is not appropriate or not correct. And that would be if I played something like this. We've kind of butchered it, right? That doesn't really sound like Happy Birthday anymore. Even the notes are right. The macro rhythm is not in. Now, that's one aspect of timing, but another very important aspect of timing is what I think of as your micro timing, i.e., beyond just getting the rhythm correct to the point where it sounds like the thing we're supposed to be playing. How on are you? How tight to the rhythm of the track you're playing with are you? How tight are you to the band? How tight are you to the backing track? How tight are you to the pulse that is happening? And we can measure this in a few different ways, but I'm going to start by playing a very simple phrase. And we're going to play it along with our backing track. We're going to play just B, and just B will be this, right? We're going to play the 7th fret ninth fret, I keep saying 7th fret, so I'm half asleep. The 9th fret on the D string, once again, this is part of our B minor pentatonic. I'm going to play this against our backing track. And we're going to play half notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like this. Let me show you what happens when I play something that's recognizable as half notes, but isn't bang on the beat. I'll play behind the beat now. Just doesn't sound as good. Now let's do the same thing, but this time we're going to play ahead of the beat. Let me play bang on. Behind. It almost feels like the tone is worse. It's a strange thing to say, but it almost feels like the tone is worse when the rhythm is bad. It's a strange old thing. Now, how this manifests in terms of our playing is that when we play in isolation, it's okay to have the rhythm be a bit more floaty in terms of what we're playing. However, when we play live, certainly when volume is involved, the more on we can be with our micro timing, the more our playing will translate to the back of the room in the same way that it did with the clean example, the playing clean. So you can think about this as playing clean, playing in time. These are very important aspects when it comes to getting your playing to translate live. Let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. Same backing track, same B minor. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some simple-ish, let's call them pentatonic blues derived phrases, maybe. I'll stick with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start drifting with my time. I'll begin by playing the time quite accurately, and then what I'll do, accurately, upset the camera by doing that. I'll begin by playing the time quite accurately, and then what I'll do is I'll start to drift the time behind, and I'll start to drift the time ahead. And you'll see how the playing almost seems to leap out more when it's bang on in time, certainly on faster passages. Now, let's take a listen and hear what it sounds like. Here we go. Not when you miss the notes. You hear how that accurate timing sounds nice and clean and precise. Let me start to drift back with my time. Let me drift ahead with my time. Ooh, doesn't sound as good. It just sounds off. It sounds off in a way that we can't quite put our finger on. Now, I'm going to head off this question here first of all. This is an interesting one from Dream, saying behind the beat, add weights to the note. It does, but when it's done deliberately, it does, is what I'm trying to say. If your timing is habitually behind, and you're not choosing to play behind, then it's likely not going to sound that great. Let me show you an example of what Dreams is talking about, where we add weight to notes by choosing to be behind the beat for certain notes. Now, let's go here, see how we end up. Now there, we're using that for dramatic effect. Now I did over-egg the pudding somewhat there and used it a bit more than I normally would, but you're absolutely correct. A little bit of, let's call it deliberate scattiness with the time can really, it can really add something, but our time should be centered in terms, it should be centered around the center of the beat. And we should choose to drift either way when it's appropriate rather than having it be the thing that we do. Now this really applies, it especially applies to rhythm playing, but it also applies to soloing. Let me confect a rhythm part for you. Now a rhythm part might be something like this if we played. I'm sure there's a cool... I'll figure it out as we go, but take a listen to what happens with my rhythm, in particular when I'm playing on the beat versus playing behind the beat versus playing ahead of the beat. Wow, I'm very out of tune. Let me just fix that very quickly, because I did say tuning was an important thing. Doodle-a-doo. That's cool. Alright, much better. Let's just get that in tune and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here we go, in time. Let's go back to the start and let's do it again, but this time we're going to play it behind the beats. So in time. There's behind. Sounds dreadful. Let's go ahead. Same thing. Also awful. Also terrible. Now, for rhythm, this is, like I say, it's even more important, but it manifests itself in soloing too. It's a little easier to demonstrate with soloing, but you can hear how big of a difference that makes in terms of the way that the track sounds, the way the whole musical endeavor sounds. When we play in time, it sounds fantastic. When we play behind or ahead, it starts to sound like a mess. Now, this is different depending upon the style of music you're playing in, right? If you're playing blues, there's going to be more leeway for being behind. If you're playing funk, you may get away with behind, but normally on for guitar is the way to go. You may get away with a little bit of ahead in punk if everyone agrees to be ahead. For metal, on is the way. Same with classic rock. For rock stuff, on is the way. Sometimes for Jimmy Page, slightly behind. But you get the gist, right? The point with this is center your time bang on the beat and things will sound more together, they will sound more coherent, and they'll also pop more. Now, let me give you another example of this, and this is going to be more of a shreddy example, but this is something Paul Gilbert talked about, which he said in an interview that really stuck with me, is when he started playing stadiums with Mr. Big. He noticed that when he played things that were rhythmically very, very accurate, da-ga-da-da-ga-da-ga-da-ga-da-da, it was much easier for him to be heard in the stadium environment. And we're going to talk about tailoring your playing to different playing environments in a second, but let me show you what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to play a phrase that is somewhat Paul Gilbert-esque, which will be something centered around this. Now if I play even with delay, if I play more in time, it's going to pop more. Whereas if I play something that is a bit less in time, even if it's a cooler line, it might not pop as well. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So here we go with a line that is not super in time. Let's go with a line that's really in time and see what it does. Notice notice how that pops out much more. Here's a drift time. On time. With some deliberate behind the beat stuff for emphasis, that works really well. Now, this should serve to illustrate how your time is not only about making everything sound better, but it also helps the listener translate what you're playing, because the listener is being bombarded with a great deal of musical information, and the more simple the calculations the listener has to perform to make sense of what you're playing against the backdrop, the more they'll perceive it as louder, better, clearer, etc. So we are simplifying the listener's experience and simplifying the listener's process by playing our lines as close to in time as we possibly can. How do we do this? Well, here's a great one from Mal Riley, because this is a very interesting point. Often playing in bands, sometimes can't hear they're playing because the drums are too loud, the guitar's too loud, or the vocals. Drummer can be too fast in a song, the guitarist can't keep up. This is a real problem, right? These are some problems that we all face. Dreams has absolutely hit the nail on the head with in-ear monitoring. I really like in-ears, personally, because of the timing aspect more than anything else. It removes latency from the other side of the stage. Now, this is not a problem if you're playing 100, 200, even stretching to 300. But if you're playing small venues, you're playing 100 cap venues, 50 cap venues even, you're close enough that it doesn't make a huge difference in terms of timing latency. But if your guitar player is on the other side of a festival stage, or the other side of an arena stage, and you're relying on, or your drummer is that far away from you, and you're relying on hearing the sound in the room to catch your timing, inevitably the laws of physics get in the way, because it takes time for sound to arrive to us, it takes time for us to react to that sound, it takes time for that sound to get back to the other musicians, they have to hear it too. So in-ears for this is, I think it's a great solution. However, the issue with this is guitar can sound very unpleasant in in-ear monitors. So a few things we can do with this: we can practice with in-ears and get used to the way they sound, but also something that I'm really a big fan of is taking some time to EQ your guitar so that it sounds good both in the room and through your ears. And what this normally involves is getting surgical with any really nasty cab resonances, which normally in my experience live somewhere between 3 and 6.5K, somewhere in that region. It's those kind of really nasty frequencies and like ring kind of sounds that sound super unpleasant when you get them really up close, but they kind of just disappear in a room, let's say. So spending a bit of time dialing that. What I wouldn't say is I wouldn't go all the way with like a really aggressive, here we go, cut at 5K. If you mean cut at 5K in terms of like low pass at 5K, do a high cut at 5K, really not a fan of that. The reason for that is there's a lot of cool air that lives up in the higher frequencies, and I don't want to just get rid of all of it. So what I'd rather do, I'd much rather go in and find the offensive frequencies that are above 5K that you're killing with the 5K cut. I'd much rather go in and find those individually and cut the nasty frequencies, but keep all of the information that's up there. Now, a cut at 10K I can get behind because there's some stuff up there for cymbals, for sibilants on vocals, fine. There's not really a great deal of guitar up there, but the guitar does have a lot of information between the 5 and 8K region, let's say. So I'm not a huge fan of a low pass at 5K personally. Not a huge fan of a low pass on a guitar full stop. A high pass, however, can be very useful, but for your in-ears, get in, take out those nasty frequencies, be surgical with it, take very fine cue cuts. There are lots of great tutorials on this, mostly from metal producers. They're quite good at this sort of thing, and there's a lot of principles we can take from that, but finding some time to do that's a really good idea. Another way you can do this if your engineer hates the way that sounds is you can set up a separate send to your in-ears versus to the front of house, and the engineer can do whatever they like with it, but for me, yeah, I want that surgical sound. So for example, when my band plays out, I mix the band's in-ears because I've got things that I want for myself, and I know how the band want their own instruments to sound, so I'm mixing it a certain way, which is different to the way it sounds through front of house. We can talk more about that another time. It's a very interesting concept. I'm sure we can go a bit further than this. Now, we talked about timing. We've talked about playing cleanly. We haven't talked about the combination effect of the two. We'll get to that in a second. But the other one we're going to talk about is playing in tune. Now, in tune is an interesting concept because it's not as simple as just having your strings tuned to the correct pitches, which I'm struggling with today. Although my studio is very hot, which I'm kind of glad of because here in the UK, it's starting to get cold, and having a bit of warmth in my studio is a bit of a blessing, but still pretty warm and pretty airless. So let me just open the door a little bit. Now, I'm going to tune my strings to the appropriate pitches, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to detune my strings and then tune them up as well. You'll hear the effect of just tuning, just physically being in tune on the way my track sounds, but then we'll talk more about the physical technique of this. So take a listen to how this affects my track. So here it is. If I play, we'll just do it on 2 strings just to make the demonstration very easy. So if I say, here's an interesting one from Nick Harrison. He's talking about the frequency range of the guitar. That's the frequency range of the fundamentals of the guitar for sure, but the guitar has harmonics up past 10K. Especially with distortion, because distortion is essentially turning up all of the harmonics. So from my producer's hat, I'm like, there was no circumstance where I would low pass a guitar at 800 because the fundamentals only go that high, because it's the harmonics that give the guitar its character. Otherwise, we'd be playing 6 strings of sine wave, which, you know, cool name for an album, that's for sure. Anyway, so here's in tune, and then we'll go to out of tune. I'll show you what it does. Okay, that's pretty in tune. Let's get them out of tune. Can I stretch them out? No, these are, oh, that's pretty out. So here I am out of tune. Let's take a listen. Gross. Horrible. Absolutely hideous. Now, here's the thing, right? If I kill that track, this guitar is pretty grossly out of tune. But you don't notice it as much in isolation. However, when you set it against the musical accompaniment, my goodness, do those tuning things poke out. Now, we all know that playing in tune is important. Tuner is the most valuable pedal, etc., etc., etc. But there are some more things to this. Our intonation is something we need to consider. Make sure that your guitar is properly intonated so that when you play further up the fretboard, it's in tune. But here's another thing with this: making sure that your physical playing is in tune. And what do we mean by this? Your physical playing is how are you sounding the notes? Are you sounding the notes in tune, or are you sounding them out of tune? Let me give you an example that matches our criteria for cleanliness and time, but I'll start to move the notes out of tune, and I'll start to move the notes out of tune by playing them out. Now, normally what this means is it means either missing bends by not playing them to pitch, or it means pressing too hard or slightly micro bending the strings as I fret them. Now, I have a bandmate who shall remain nameless, and I'm forever watching this guy's hands because he's chronic for just ever so slightly creeping notes sharp, and it really annoys me. Really, really annoys me. All my bandmates are paranoid now. You can all figure out who it is. I will say this: it is most definitely not John Page. He is the most in-tune guitar player I've ever heard in my entire life. It's crazy, right? It's one of the reasons he sounds so good. It's not the chops, it's not the taste. Tuning, incredible. Anyway, so let me play, and I'm going to start to creep these out of tune. Let's begin with some in tune. Let's get out of tune. Grim. Absolutely horrible. Anybody just tuning in at this point will go, that guy can't play the guitar. It might be right. Who knows? But anyway, that is as much time as we're going to spend on that. Now, how can we make sure that this is actually working for us? Well, here's a little trick that we can use. And I used to think this was cheating, right? Much like we had some comments about fret wraps before. I used to think this was cheating, is to have a tuner on stage at all times and have it active at all times. So for me, I have 2 tuners in my live rig. I have a little D'Addario tuner, which is always on. And then I have the big tuner on my Quad Cortex that I use to actually tune my guitar. The D'Addario one, I don't tune the guitar with. I use that to reference my own playing and make sure that if I can't hear something, so if I can't get an accurate pitch reference in the noisiness of battle, I can look and I can make sure that my bend is in tune, and I can make sure that the note I'm sustaining is in tune. And if I'm playing something that's really, really high pitched and I can't really pitch it, I can make sure that it's the note that I'm going for. Now, I used to think this was cheating. I used to think this was cheating until I read an interview with David Gilmour. And David Gilmour does this. He has a tuner on stage to make sure that when he plays Comfortably Numb, right, make sure that those bends are absolutely in tune. And if it's good enough for Davey G, it is good enough for the likes of me. Now, having a tuner ahead of you, or a tuner to look at just as a reference, is super valuable for this. But also we can train our musical instincts by listening very closely to the notes we're playing and seeing if we can hear them as being in tune. Now, let's put this all together and we'll show you what I'm talking about, and then we'll carry this on with a little more discussion in terms of adapting your playing to different environments. And that'll be quite brief because we are running shy of time, but maybe I'll do another stream on that another time. So anyway, here we go. Let's start with playing that is not clean, is not in time, and is not in tune, and then we'll fix it one bit at a time. Here we go. So not in tune, not in time, not clean. Gross. A little Wayne, it's horrible. Okay, let's fix the tuning. Let's fix the timing. Let's fix the cleanliness. And now you can hear it. Suddenly, it's because I haven't changed that much in terms of what I'm playing. And you can hear it's almost like a Build-A-Bear thing. You can hear the soloing just creeping into focus, let's say. It's almost what it feels like. So it feels like the ideas that we're trying to play are becoming more tightly focused and more clearly, easily heard. Again, the reason for this, I think, this is just a pet theory, is that the listener has less processing to do. They don't need to try and make sense of what you're playing, so it doesn't hurt our heads so much. If you play cleanly, you play in time, and you play in tune, you're playing whatever it is will always be represented better than if you don't do those things. Now, let's move on to another aspect of playing live, which is a bit more philosophical rather than purely technical, which is to tailor your playing in the broad sense to the environment that you're playing in here. Now, what I'm not talking about is making appropriate stylistic choices for the genre of music you're playing. That's a given. So we assume that when you're playing metal, you're playing things that are appropriate for metal. When you're playing blues, you're playing things that are appropriate for blues, etc. This is a little bit more, I guess there's a bit more philosophy to this, which is kind of gauging your audience's response. Now, this is a fun thing that I've been doing when I've been on the road, and I do this every time that I play out. depending upon the venue I'm playing and the kind of people I'm playing for and the nature of the sound system, the PA, and the nature of the sound on stage and how big the room is, etc., and what kind of bands are being playing around us, I'll tailor what I'm playing based upon the audience's response. So here's an interesting thing. I've noticed that when the stages get bigger and I'm playing large outdoor stages, I need to simplify my playing to have it translate. The smaller the environment gets, the more I can kind of go for it with complicated stuff and have that really work and have that translate. I think the reason for this is the bigger the stage, the bolder the presentation has to be. And I'm going to use the analogy for this of your physical presentation on stage. Now, if you're playing a small venue and you happen to have a really cool custom jacket that you're wearing, and the custom jacket is black, but it has lots of cool patterns on it that are also black, and they kind of just show up in the light, the people in the front 10 rows will get a good look at that jacket. They'll be able to see exactly what's going on there. They'll be able to appreciate it. If you are 20 foot away from the front row because you're at a stadium gig or you're on a large festival stage, the details in that jacket are going to be completely lost to everybody but the photographers. And you would notice much more if the jacket was black but it had gold sleeves. I don't know, I'm making this up, right? You're free to dress however you want. The point with this is that the intricacies of our dress are lost the further back the audience gets and the bigger the stage gets. So we need to make bigger, bolder choices. And so it goes with playing. The absolute intricacies of the craziest stuff with our playing get lost, and we need to make bigger, bolder statements as we go further. Here's an interesting one from Marcin. Marcin is saying, he's saying active pickups are the way to go live. I have a philosophy for this. I don't think active pickups are always the way to go live. However, if I'm playing in the 2-guitar band, I will almost always take fluences to the gig. But if I'm playing in a 1-guitar band, I'm almost always taking passives. The reason for this is I think fluences do this wonderful thing where they cut without sounding cutty. They just have this magic trick of being extra present, and you can hear the notes that you're playing really clearly. However, I don't think you necessarily need or even want that in a 1-guitar band where you've got loads of space. So in a small band, like a trio, I'm taking passives. In a bigger band, maybe there's keys, etc., I'm taking fluences. Although Strats also work really well for this because they have this wonderful, and Tellys, really wonderful ability to cut. So I think that's a really valid point. Now, we're getting on to tailoring the playing. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a couple of solos, and I'm going to pretend let's see if I can carry this off. I'm going to pretend for one of them that I'm in a small club, and then the next one I'm at a large festival. I did these back to back just this week gone, and I made exactly these adjustments. Now, how I'm choosing to make these adjustments are based upon trying stuff in the first song or so, the solo in the first song, maybe the second song, and just kind of gauging what the audience responds to. And if the audience comes back and goes, yeah, on something, I know that's the thing to do more of. And if the audience is like, if it's lost on them, I know to back out of that and lean on something else. So let's take the example of a small club solo. We're going to hopefully melt some faces. So we're playing in B minor once again. I can get away with that, very shreddy, get away with that in a small club. Might not work so well in a large venue. Let's say I want to play some fast stuff, I may simplify it to play something like this. Let me show you those again. So this is small club where I can be loosey-goosey with the timing. That's going to get completely lost on a large stage. It works well in small venues, large stage, completely lost. Large stage. Bit of small club going on there, you get the gist. Now, this can be completely reactive, but that's just an example of the two kind of styles of thinking that I'm going at with this, and I'm moving between the two depending upon how the audience is reacting, because ultimately we're there to give the audience a good time. Right, that's basically it. And to entertain myself. Herbie Hancock said it best. He said, music is always for the listener, but the musician is the first listener. And I like that a lot. It gives me a license to entertain myself too, which is kind of cool. Dreams is saying, any shows in Germany? We've just done 4 shows in Germany. I'm really sorry, man. We'll be back next year, I promise. We've done 4 shows in Germany. We did, where did we do? We did Dusseldorf, we did Kassel, we did, I'm blanking, Oldenburg, and we did a town called Gries, which is a very small town, quite rural, and it was fantastic. Unbelievable gig, right? They were all incredible, right? The Oldenburg one was superb. It was a record store I put it on, but we played in a local venue. Amazing, right? So we would love to get back to Germany. I love playing in Germany. Which part of Germany are you in? Let me know, because I love it all. I'd love to know where you'd like us to come and play. Oh, by the way, also, I will be playing at Guitar Summit in Mannheim. So if you're at Guitar Summit, come and say hi. I'll be there. I'll be doing a clinic for my back guitars. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I will be there. Yes, I will be at Mannheim for the Guitar Summit. Please come and say hello. I'd love it if you did. So in terms of being reactive with your playing, it really is about trying some things and being able to adapt the way you're playing on the fly to match an audience. You know, maybe, like I said, maybe taking a more bold rhythmic statement with what you're playing, or subtracting from the pools of notes. Maybe don't hit the chromatic stuff quite so much on the big stages. Maybe pentatonics are your friend. And then in smaller places, feel free to add some bits and bobs in, but again, gauge the audience's response. If the audience is bored by your playing, try some freakier stuff. If the audience is just completely disconnected from your playing, try some bolder, more simple stuff. Just try it, see what works, and then ride that wave and be prepared for it to be different the following night. This is all part of the fun of playing live. Folks, we're going to take some questions. We've got about 5 minutes left, so we're going to take as many questions in this time as we possibly can. I'm going to come back to this one very quickly, right? This is a really interesting point from our friend Response Audio with regards tone. Now, this is something Pete Thorne's talked about, and I think Pete is great at educating on this stuff and obviously has fabulous tone. But he talks about the idea of the tones that people will conjure when they're primarily home players versus the tones people will conjure when they're primarily live players. Because when you're playing live, you need a lot less of that big breathy low end that you might think, but you also need a little bit more sizzle and a little bit more nastiness and a bit more grit in the tone to really help you cut. Now, let me show you an example of this. So if I take, let's get some EQ up here very quickly, and I'll show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to go to my tube out. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, never mind, moved them in, so I can't do that. That's a shame. I was going to show you some editing on my tube amp expander, but I can't do that, unfortunately. But I can do it on something else. So let's say, for example, I take a quite dark sound, and maybe we dial up a low to low end, so we get this. Very satisfying sound. And then the opposite might be if we take a low to low end out and put a low to top end in. Less fun to play, but check it out. If I go with the track, here is the really, especially if we turn the track up loud, here's the really dark sound. Struggling to cut through, especially in the low notes. Here's the very bright sounds. pleasant in its own, but just having that extra bit of extra sizzle on the top really goes a very long way towards helping with the cut. Now, Steve Morse is a great example of this, and also quite an extreme example of this, because he has a channel on his amplifier with incredible control over the mid-range. So if it was when he was playing his angle amps, if he was playing those by that point, the ones with the blue fascia, the blue faceplate, man, like, there's so much stuff to be done with those controls. It's not even funny. You can do tons and tons and tons of bits and bobs. Really good fun, but it's a great example of how the tone sounds a certain way when it's isolated and a certain way when it's dialed in. So I'm very glad you commented that. That's really interesting. We got lots of folks talking about Guitar Summit. If you're coming to Summit, I'd love to see you. Don't forget, right? We'd love to see you. Now, folks, I think we're out of time. We're out of time, but I just want to reiterate the things that we've talked about today. So here are ways that you can make sure that you play your best live. You can make sure you sound your best live by committing to getting your muting on point, having timing that is on point, apart from when you choose to slide the timing maybe, and then also having tuning that is on point. So timing, tuning, cleanliness, that will make sure that your playing translates as best as it possibly can. Now, beyond that, you can also take a look at what your audience is getting off on and do more of that. Don't be afraid to experiment, but tailor your playing to the audience. Here's another fun example of that, by the way. I recently played a friend's birthday party, and he's a very good friend, great drummer, fabulous player, just outrageously good. And it was a room full of musicians, but it wasn't a room full of guitar players. So we had Stuart Shields from Lick Library in the audience, right? Because Stu's a friend, he lives locally, he's a very good friend. We go way back. He lives locally, he's also a good friend of said drummer in question. And he commented, he said, you know, that when I played very differently with this band that I'm playing with, the VCR. I love my band, great. Little trio. I played very differently in that room to when he's seen me play before. And the reason for this is, what I wanted to do was I wanted to give the musicians in the audience something that they would enjoy, knowing that they were musicians and not guitar players, which means I'm not going to bust out the brute force guitar chops so much as I'm going to lean on melody, I'm going to lean on expressiveness, I'm going to lean on interesting note choices, because that's what's going to get the audience off. So it's a subtle shift, it's a mindset shift, and we'll probably talk more about this in a future stream, but that adaptability is a philosophical point that will also make sure you continue to sound your best live, and it goes way beyond just choosing appropriate lines for appropriate styles. Folks, we have definitely run out of time. I'm going to play one more time on this Black Sabbath track. I'm going to switch to my favorite lead sound. I've been playing the Victory Super Sheriff for the whole stream today because I'm really digging it, but I think we'll go back to the Super Kraken, which is of course my favorite amp. I love this amp, it's just something else. I'm going to play some more. I will see you guys next week, same time, same place. We'll be live once again with a brand new stream for you. If you haven't done so already, subscribe on your way out the door, and I'll catch you guys same time next week.